Well, that leads on to the next question. What is fake? The virus, the test, the treatment? Could you address that, please, as you wish?
So I suppose the thing is we have beautiful immune systems, and this is the 8th pandemic, right? The next one that's coming, they're going to call Marburg, which is a type of Ebola, which I talked about last year in their agenda of having multiple pandemics. And so what it will be, it could be that the symptoms of the booster or the next influenza vaccination will give bleeding, like you say, and the Marburg virus causes hemorrhagic fever, which is bleeding, and that they have another PCR test developed by Bill Gates, and they have another so-called vaccine, but the vaccine contains aluminium, which is a neurotoxin, and ricin, R-I-C-I-N, which is one of the top 5 most toxic things on the planet. Okay, and that is the vaccine allegedly for Marburg, which may be the next one. And so what we have to see is a lot of the adverse events they are labeling as the disease. And that's how this mechanism works. But in the previous ones, like in swine flu or in coronavirus, it turns out, as Dr. Warburg said, who uncovered the swine flu, pandemic was entirely not based on any facts, and the PCR test and the exact mechanism was not working. He said then in 2009 it was the biggest scandal in history. So I think what people need to be aware of is that we have an immune system. So, and if people are given the information of nutrition, vitamin D, C, and zinc, they will work for many of these, if not all of these so-called infections. So I think there is another one coming, which is Marburg, and it may be that they now know people have well woken up to COVID-19. The WHO is on track to declare another pandemic. And then if the governments with this, overt, too much police power, and the police, if everybody look around, they're all dressed the same across the world, essentially as Robocops, and they're using the masks so that the police can hide their faces so that they won't be accountable, but that they're going to try and enforce these lockdowns, because otherwise they really will be pushing on injecting people. And if they've had multiple injections previously in their lives for influenza and COVID-19, get a booster, influenza and Marburg, then those people will, most of those people, their life expectancy will be drastically reduced. And or even chronically so ill that there's no going back. And I think people will be entirely shocked around the world for what could happen in, the next 6 months, year, 2 years. We needed a lawful repository of the vials to help detoxify people. And the governments and the pharmaceutical industries did not make any of those available, and were really draconian measures were taken when people tried to lawfully ask for some of the vials. So we don't really have a systematic way of detoxifying people now. The methods that worked for SARS-CoV-2 or the influenza-like illness may not work for the adverse events for what's in these vials. We also know there are some very toxic things in the vials that cause anaphylaxis, like polyethylene glycol, polysorbate 80, and other components, and one of them is described as a medical device. And there seems to be metallic components as well, and publications of graphene oxide, which are all very difficult to detoxify, unfortunately.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Karl.
That although Marburg is a very different virus from the coronavirus, many of the elements of response are the same.
About 150 contacts have been identified and are being followed up, including 3 family members and a health worker who have been identified as high-risk close contacts. Marburg is a very different virus to the one that caused COVID-19. But many of the elements of the response are the same: isolating and caring for those infected, tracing and quarantining their contacts, and engaging local communities in the response. There is no licensed vaccine for Marburg, although there are vaccines under development. And WHO is working with our partners to seek opportunities to assist them during this outbreak through the R&D blueprint for epidemics